how do you keep the soil healthy? It stays healthy if we're leaving it alone, but if we're intensively growing in it, we need to be tending it. Right now we have our chickens in our garden and they're pooping in there and scratching up and eating grubs. But apart from that, we put compost, we add our compost to it. They're wonderfully poop-infused straw when we empty out there. I mean, we do this carefully so that we're not contaminating food, but yet nurturing it by keeping it planted too. We all used to think you till everything up and you leave it bare, but that's one of the worst things you do. So putting cover crops on it, rotating your crops, it's an important piece of it. We use a blend of clover and some beans. There's a number of different crops that are just going to feed back the soil. It keeps roots in the soil, so all those microbes and worms have things to do and work with. And then we do till ours back in, and then that's called a green manure, and we're just putting that organic matter before we plant it. Some don't till at all, they just plant their plants, but we're trying to till less than we used to, so you're not breaking up this wonderful infrastructure that is full of life there, that it's invisible, so we don't know how important it is and how cool it is when you work with it instead of try to impose your will upon it.
Well, I always say on giant pumpkins 3 S's, and one is the right seed. You have to have the right genetics. Our big orange ones that we sell to Fred Meyer and other accounts is just a good variety called Prize Winner, and it's a nice orange pumpkin and just does wonderful. The really big ones, when we get 400, 500, or 600, sometimes 700-pound pumpkins, those are the Atlantic giant ones that you hear people setting world records now that's over 2,000 pounds. And we've only had an 800-pounder. Here again, the same as with the soil. You've got to have the soil in good shape, and we put a moderate amount of raw chicken manure on the soil where our giant pumpkins grow. And then the third S is space. Prize winners, we plant 10 foot apart, sometimes 15. The really big ones, we plant 20 feet apart. They've got to have room to grow, and one plant will spread and cover most of that ground around there, so they have to have space around them. Winter squash can be 2 foot to 4 foot apart, depending on the size of the plant's going to be. So the spacing is true of all of our crops, but especially of the giant pumpkins.
Our aphids took out our whole broccoli crop about 6 weeks prior to when it would have expended itself. Wow. We didn't water our corn adequately, and it was a disappointing crop. You know, I've tried growing quinoa 2 years now, and I just can't grow it. So that's disappointing when you think things ought to go a way and they don't go that way.
We grow stuff all through the winter. We have winter cabbage and overwintering cauliflower. Last December's freeze, 10, 15-degree temperatures, we lost all of our overwintering cauliflower. You know, that was only a $40,000 hit between. We had a very good year the year before, and we had basically zero this year, and so that was kind of you know.
I don't really like hoeing. If you notice our trees, we've now put a pasture grass between them, and so we're not weeding that at all. We just let that have that. It retains water better. It helps keep other unwanted weeds out. And we use a similar thing between our trellising so that we're no longer keeping all the weeds out between the trellises. We've got a clover ground cover there that's year-round and looks more attractive too. It feels more life-giving than when you. It seems sad to me when I see these hazelnut orchards with this bare ground, and there's something not right about that. I wish it was easier to make a living at it. We can do this because Mark still has a full-time job. I talk to so many young people who would love this life, the life of being so connected, growing food for people. It's a different conversation, but our food is inexpensive, and that has many goods, but it's come at a cost too.
So any month of the year, any season, I can walk into Fred Meyer. I can go to the produce section and I can choose an onion or a cucumber or a tomato or kale. When I'm standing in that produce section looking at all of those different vegetables, what would you like me to remember?
we have a community garden. You know, a lot of people know that where people come and work on our farm in exchange for their produce, and one of the benefits of that is that, especially for kids, that they learn what it takes to grow the produce. It doesn't just show up on the shelf at Fred Meyer automatically. Even after it leaves our farms, it may go, in our case, to a couple different wholesalers that take it to their warehouse, and then from their warehouse it goes to the stores, and in case one of our wholesalers sells to Fred Meyer's, or goes from their warehouse to Fred Meyer's warehouse, and then Fred Meyer out to the store. And everybody involved, and then even the produce department at the store has got to treat it right and get it on the shelf. We're so spoiled in our country that we have it, because we have a pretty good distribution system, and only thing that fouls it up usually is weather, but somehow all of us farmers somehow get it all orchestrated, and we all decide what we want to grow, and works with supply and demand. And if all of us judged wrong, or the weather came by, your prices are going to be higher, and vice versa happens if we have an abundance. But it's just a very complex system, and it takes a lot of work to get it there. So
I imagine you notice this, that when you're eating a cucumber in February, or a tomato, especially a tomato, you're just getting a shadow of what it tastes like. Anything that's coming out of season and from so far away. It's like well, if I was to mix a metaphor, seeing through the mirror dimly. I was talking to a tomato farmer in California who said any hand-picked tomatoes coming from south, not the United States, unless it's a farmer's market, because it's too labor intensive. When you're picking cucumbers, it's backbreaking work out there, and those buckets of cucumbers are mighty heavy, and I'd just like you to know somebody's put a lot of work into that, as invisible as it is to you. I think Mark and I, you know, we can sit and eat mostly Fern Creek food, and that's great, but our saying grace has very much changed to be aware of the farmers, the ranchers, the people providing food for us that we didn't provide, to thank them for their labor, because it's hard work.